Hello, everyone, and welcome to Module 2, HIPAA and Confidentiality and Professional Boundaries.
So let's talk about what the objectives are. We're going to review the basics of HIPAA. We're going to gain a greater understanding of confidentiality and why it's important. We're going to learn about the impact of social media on information sharing, learn practical tips to ensure privacy, learn how to report breaches of confidentiality, learn patient rights as they pertain to privacy, be able to identify examples of HIPAA violations, and understand professional boundaries. So what is HIPAA? The HIPAA privacy rule provides federal protections for personal health information and protects a patient's right to that information through the Office of Civil Rights. At the same time, the privacy rule is balanced so that it permits the disclosure of personal health information needed for patient care and other important purposes. There are security rules that specify a series of administrative, physical, and technical safeguards for covered entities to the use and to assure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of electronic protected health information. So, what is HIPAA? The privacy rule protects all individually identifiable health information held or transmitted in any manner. This information is referred to as protected health information, or PHI. It can be called ePHI when referring to electronic protected health information. We all have access to information about patients that should not be shared, such as name, address, diagnosis, medical history, etc. Individually identifiable health information is information including demographic data that relates to the individual's past, present, or future physical or mental health condition, care provided to the individual, and information related to the payment for care. HIPAA laws and practices have changed over the years as new situations and technologies emerge. Agencies must show efforts of privacy protections and how a breach would be handled. HIPAA and confidentiality. HIPAA compliance requirements are also addressing the newest trend to move to electronic medical records. There are additional rights to patients, including access to their own electronic medical records. Many of you may have something called MyChart, so that you are able to see your own information, your visit notes, etc., and often very quickly. If a provider has electronic medical records, patients now have the right to request electronic copies of these records. There's been a lot in the news in recent years about computer hacks and data breaches, and Equifax breach was one of the most glaring, with almost 150 million people's data breached. I am supposing that many of you at some time in your life have received something that where your information was breached. While this information did not contain medical information through Equifax, it did contain enough to worry those affected. States are becoming more aware of the consequences and are moving to make their standards tighter. So let's talk about the aid in HIPAA. It's imperative that you know how to handle confidential information to protect yourself, your patient, and the agency. This presentation will focus mainly on privacy issues and security of information. You will learn how to protect privacy in all aspects of patient care. So what is confidentiality and why is it important? As an aid, maintaining confidentiality means that the information that you are entitled to about your patient is privileged information and should not be shared with anyone other than members of your healthcare team and your supervisor. This means family that you don't have permission to speak to. This is so critically important. You don't know about family relationships, and so therefore it's very important that you don't talk with others that you don't know if you have permission to speak with them. So what is confidentiality? And why is it important? We are all responsible for maintaining patient privacy and confidentiality. There are punishments that have been established for those who violate this law. If someone is found to have knowingly breached confidentiality or who did so for financial gain, they could face very serious charges. The OCR is the Office of Civil Rights. They take breaches very seriously. There was an incident in 2016 where a home care worker took patient information out of the office and did not secure it properly, leaving it where others could access it. The patient information was stolen by the worker's estranged husband in an attempt to leverage to get her back. The worker ended up abandoning the information. The estranged husband reported the breach, and the company was fined almost $240,000. So why is it important? Because of their size and function, hospitals tend to deal a lot with HIPAA and confidentiality issues. However, it doesn't mean that it's not important for home care. So let's talk about the Los Angeles Medical Center. They terminated 5 employees and 1 volunteer who inappropriately looked at medical records during the time when a celebrity was there giving birth. The sharing of passwords and credentials was also investigated in that case. Never share your password with anyone. So at this point, you may have cell phones within your agency. You may be documenting electronically. It is very important that you never give your password to your supervisors in the office. You cannot give your password to other teammates, to patients. No one else should have your password. Even an accidental breach of confidentiality can result in fines and may compromise your status with your employer. Depending on the severity of your actions, your employer may take disciplinary measures which could lead to termination. Authorities could also get involved, which could lead to hefty fines, probation, and possible jail time. So, what are some ways that you could breach confidentiality? You could share stories about patients with friends or families. Use location-based cell phone features or apps that friends and families have access to, and they can see your exact location. You can fail to safeguard your electronic devices or keep personal patient information on those devices. Share pictures or selfies from your patients' homes with identifiable information in the background. So is technology friend or foe? This brings us to a topic that seems to consume this world at this time, electronics. Cell phones and smartphones in particular have transformed our world and made us more accessible than ever. We have become a nation of oversharers, putting ourselves and our personal information into the world for all to see. This is a dangerous practice, however, when you are with people whose information is meant to be private and protected. It might not even be clear to you that you could be sharing protected information. So we've all heard of these terms, right? Some older than others. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, blogging, Vine, Snapchat, dating apps, photo apps, and of course, TikTok. Right? So I will tell you, I have a 19-year-old son, and so therefore I see a lot of TikToks. And unfortunately, I see a lot of TikToks with nursing assistants, nurse aides who are with patients who are laughing about health conditions or making fun of those patients. And I often I wonder if those families know that these TikToks exist. So all of these common apps and practices are marketed as social. Being more social is the expectation, sharing with those around you. However, these apps and sites have the potential to breach your patient's confidentiality. All of these have the ability to show your location. If you access these apps or sites while you're at work or on a break at your patient's home, you have just shared your patient's personal protected information. These are just a small handful of the popular apps and websites available for social media. New apps and websites are created every day to challenge the boundaries of the biggest hit. The possibilities for sharing life experiences, thoughts, pictures, videos, everything in life is made very easy by today's technology. While many sites have privacy settings in place, these often fail and are certainly not foolproof. Our younger generation struggles to see the potential for harm of sharing too much information about oneself on a forum that is essentially unerasable. Two of the most popular apps right now are Instagram and Snapchat. Users enjoy the quick conversation and feel safe that the picture or video will be deleted quickly. The aide who uses this at work may not even realize there's protected health information in the picture, or they may not care because they think it will be deleted soon anyway. These are dangerous practices and they leave so much room for disaster. So there's always going to be a record. Someone can screenshot. There's always a workaround to maintain the information on the web. A nursing assistant in Wisconsin was in a great deal of trouble over a Snapchat video. She thought an interaction with a scantily clad 93-year-old male Alzheimer's patient was funny, so she recorded their interaction and posted it. Her friends repeatedly shared the video until someone finally reported it. Not only did she lose her job, but she faced criminal felony charges. She took a nude photo without consent and faced up to 3.5 years in prison. App users have to understand that their pictures and videos are not private, nor should they be taken as most agencies at this point have policies in place regarding the use of personal cell phones while at work. Likewise, many agencies have company-issued cell phones, laptops, or tablets for employees to use that have safeguard features. For example, some smartphones and tablets offered by companies have the ability to be erased, shut down, and/or located from a distance in the event of a loss or theft. Protecting patient information is at the heart of these policies. A breach due to a cell phone mistake could cost you your job and your agency thousands to millions in damages. So what measures can you take to ensure that you don't breach confidentiality? Turn off location features on your personal smartphone. Never use your cell phone to take pictures of your patient, their environment, or yourself in their environment. Never add your location to a Facebook post while you're at a patient's home. Never post, blog, or tweet about your patient, your company, job stories, etc. Never use your patient's computer for any personal use or social networking. Never video your patient or anything related to your patient. And know your agency policy for phone use, social networking, and other internet usage while on company time. Never discuss your patients with your friends, family, church members, etc. Even in general conversations, breaches of confidentiality may happen. For example, would be if you asked your church to pray for your patient Jane Doe and her family. She has cancer and she's been transferred to hospice care since she only has a short time left to live. You don't have to say a patient's name to disclose personal information. If you live in a small community and you discuss your patient's health information, the listener might be able to figure out who you're talking about based on other information that you have provided. Do not ever give personal, identifiable information to anyone not involved in patient care. Example, you are providing care for a disabled woman whose child is getting ready to start school. You call the school nurse, which you should not do, to discuss the home situation and your concern with the mother's health and how it may impact the girl at school. You did not receive authorization to do so before your conversation. So I hope you can see the many problems with that example. Never have your friends or families drive you to a patient's home. If you do not have transportation, then discuss this matter with your supervisor. Also, you would never want to stop at a neighbor's home and ask, "Could you tell me where Mr. John Doe lives? I'm an aide who's been assigned to provide care for him after his car accident." Never give out your patient's phone number to friends or family. This is also a breach of confidentiality. If your family needs to reach you, then they may contact your office and your supervisor will notify you. Never store your patient's phone numbers in your cell phone. If the cell phone is lost, so is identifiable information. Do not assume that it is okay for you to discuss your patient's care with the patient's family members. I believe that's probably the third time that I've said that. Really important. You do not understand the dynamics within that family, and they could be quite complex. Without consent, no part of your patient's care should be discussed. Ask your patient if you have their permission to discuss care. Inform your supervisor if you have requests from the patient or family to do so. Another example, you are assigned to a male patient who has just been diagnosed with advanced HIV. His boss calls and asks him about his condition. The boss actually is speaking to you. You answer the phone and you tell them that just because he has now been diagnosed with HIV, he is on multiple HIV medications. He is not eating well, and you don't expect him to return to work anytime soon. Your patient had not told his boss about his HIV. He had told his boss he had cancer. So now you have disclosed the fact that your patient is infected with HIV, and this is something that the patient was trying to keep private. I hope that sits with you for a moment to think about how severe that is. Never leave patient care information where others can see it. This includes any type of demographic information containing a name, address, phone number, social security number, medical diagnosis, etc. This also includes your care plan and flow sheets if you're still on a paper system. So let's talk about another example. You have a few minutes before your next patient, so you decide to go eat lunch at a restaurant and work on some paperwork. You are alone at the table, so you feel like you're being careful. However, your patient's information is out in plain view. The truth is, you just don't know who might be able to see it. The waitstaff or even other patrons sitting near you may easily see your patient's name or other personal information. You can never be too careful with your patient's health information. It's never okay to take your patient's information into a public place to work on. Never take information regarding another patient to your current patient's home. Even if you feel this information is secure in your bag or your notebook, others can still have access to it when you are not looking or busy in the home. In fact, I will tell you a personal story. I had a surveyor once who accompanied a nurse aide into a patient's home, and while the surveyor was watching the aide prepare a meal and doing some other things, the patient actually went into the employee's bag while the surveyor was at home, while the surveyor was there in the home, and accessed information. So it is very, very important that you secure it at all times. Patients are curious about your day and those individuals with whom you work. You may provide care for family members that do not live in the same home. Never discuss one patient with another unless you have approval. Even if the patients are family and know that you are a common link, never discuss care information. If you could respond by saying, "I'm sorry, I'm not at liberty to discuss any information. You can call the office and speak to my supervisor." They would have to obtain permission to discuss that type of information. I always tell my staff, make me, as your supervisor, the bad guy. If a patient asks you to do something that's not on the plan of care, say to them, "Let me call the office and speak to my supervisor and get permission." If they ask you to do anything that you are not comfortable with, perhaps errands is on your care plan, but with this errand they want you to buy a pack of cigarettes. Say, let me call the office and ask. If they are asking specific information about patients or they tell you something about a patient that they should not know, make sure that your supervisor is aware. Always, always, always use your supervisor as that person who will help to take the emphasis off of you and place it onto the company so that we can revert back to referencing the rules and the policies. When your supervisor makes a visit to the home to see you, never discuss any other patients in front of the patient for whom you are caring for currently. If you need to discuss another patient's care with your supervisor, ask to speak to them in private. Walking them to their car is always a safer option to discuss other patients. Never telephone the office to discuss one patient when you are in another patient's home. Your patient or the other family can overhear your telephone call. If you must call the office to discuss another patient, please do so in another room and never give the patient's name or other identifying information. You could say, I'm calling about my first patient of the day. Your agency staff will know your schedule and will be able to determine which patient that you are speaking about. If you see your patient outside of their home, for example at the grocery store, never introduce them to your friends or family as your patient. If your patient has guests, never discuss your patient's care with them if questioned. Likewise, do not assume that it's okay to discuss your patient's medical issues in front of their guests. Their diagnosis could be private. So, unintentional breaches. Innocent and non-malicious accidents happen to all of us. There are times when unintentional breaches of personal information occur. An example would be if a missent email or fax was received by your agency. The sender was notified and the message was deleted with no further use or disclosure of the personal information. This is not a breach. Another example, you see a fellow staff member and start discussing your patient's care, including personal and identifiable information. It turns out that the staff member is not assigned to that same case and did not need to know that personal information. This was an inadvertent mistake and was shared with the staff member, so this is not technically a breach as long as that staff member does not redisclose that information or use it inappropriately. So, who can you discuss patient care with? You may discuss patient care with any member of the healthcare team that is directly involved with your patient's care. However, as you come into the office, you speak to one of the receptionists and they tell you that Mr. Brown is their neighbor and he asks you, how is he doing? Although the receptionist is a staff member of the agency and saw your patient's name listed somewhere, he or she has no reason to know the medical condition of this patient. Be careful that the people that you discuss patient care and concerns with are those who have a need for the information about your patient. Your agency may undergo various audits to ensure that proper patient care is being carried out. Your supervisor would notify you and the patient would be notified if such an audit were to happen. Your patient would first have to consent to the visit. The auditor may ask you questions about why various parts of care are provided. Speak with your supervisor to make sure that the auditor is from a credible establishment and get approval from your supervisor prior to answering any questions. Ask your supervisor how your agency documents those individuals with whom the patient has agreed to release medical information to. You may discuss the patient's care only with those individuals. This means that someone from your agency has obtained consent to speak to those individuals about this patient's care. So what would you do if you know that someone has broken confidentiality? Report any breaks in confidentiality to your supervisor. Your agency may have a privacy officer who needs to educate staff further. Do your part to ensure that your agency is compliant with privacy and security standards. If you overhear someone talking about a patient where others can hear, let them know that you are able to hear their conversation and perhaps they need to move to a more private location. If you learn of a past employee talking about a patient or the agency, this is reportable as well. You are to abide by privacy standards even after the time you are no longer employed with your agency. HIPAA protections don't end when you leave your agency or even if that company closes. I'm going to add a helpful hint here. If you are interviewing for a job and the new place that you're interviewing you ask specific questions about the care, the types of cases, please do not reference your cases or the patients that you have provided care to by name. Do not add any identifiable information. You could certainly say that you have experience with patients who have a diagnosis of whatever that may be, but you cannot call them by name during an interview. That's a real quick shutdown for many employers because at that point they understand that you do not understand the importance of HIPAA. So how will patients know their rights about privacy and confidentiality? HIPAA mandates that agencies provide current, updated written information to the patient stating how their information will be used. Patients are notified that they have access to their own medical records if they wish to see them. You will need to notify your supervisor or privacy officer if your patient expresses a desire to move their medical records. Your agency supervisor and the professional staff are responsible for the notification of the patient and having necessary information and forms completed. Reassure your patients that while all the information you know about them will remain confidential, patients worry that others will be made aware of their health status and their need for care. So how does someone file a complaint? Always start with your supervisor and document your reports to your supervisor. If you believe that an agency or other covered entity violated yours or someone else's health information, privacy rights, or committed another violation of the privacy or security rule, you may file a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights. OCR can investigate those complaints. So how to file a complaint? Anyone can file. Anyone can file a complaint alleging a violation of the privacy or security rule. Supervisors are not perfect. If you don't feel that your supervisor is taking your concerns seriously, you may visit the OCR's website. That's listed for you. They accept reports via mail, fax, email, or now their online portal. If you need help filing a complaint or have a question about the complaint or consent, please email OCR and you have the email address listed for you. So let's talk quickly about professional boundaries. And while I say quickly, it doesn't mean that this is any less important. Please refrain from becoming emotionally involved with your patients. Now, that's really hard to do sometimes because you may be in a home for a very long time. Months, years even. But you have to be able to set professional boundaries and realize that you are an employee there providing care through your job. Do not give out your personal cell phone number. Do not ever staff a case privately without the consent of your agency. There are all types of legal ramifications with that. Never do anything that's not on your plan of care. If a patient is inappropriate with you, please inform your supervisor. Never witness a document. Never agree to be an emergency contact or power of attorney for a patient. If you ever receive a court subpoena, call the office immediately. So this concludes our session. I hope that this is some new information for you. Perhaps I've covered old information that you've known. Please take HIPAA, confidentiality, privacy, and professional boundaries very seriously. Thank you all for listening.